name is Katie. I'm on the product marketing team. So I work closely with our customers to understand how you're using Houzz Pro and get feedback from you, and then work with our product and engineering teams to make sure that we're building the right products for our customers. So I'm sure I've spoken with a lot of you before. Thanks again for all your feedback, and thanks for joining here. And then Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Chris Kincaid. I've been a client success manager at Houzz for a little bit over 5 years. I was with us whenever it first began on more of the marketing side, and have been able to watch pretty much the entire growth of the software end of things as well. I work pretty much exclusively with interior designers, and uh, between spending so much time in the software, really have gotten to get to know it all very well. And hopefully, if any of my own clients are in here, you learned something good today.
Awesome. We do have a Q&A tab. So if you have any questions as we're going through, you can put them right into that Q&A section, and we will do our best to answer them as we go through. So any questions, please speak up, and either myself or Chris will answer them. So today we're going to be going into a project management deep dive. So for those of you who were here yesterday, we covered a lot about settings, basic setup. Now today we're getting into some more of the fun elements. How do you actually use Houzz Pro to manage your projects? So we'll be going through the product clipper, which is a fan favorite, talk about proposals, invoicing, and retainer, as well as scheduled payments. And then we'll cover purchase orders and get into the project tracker and how you can use that to manage your products along the way. And then we'll wrap up with time and expense tracking and reporting. So again, this is the second day of our academy. Tomorrow we'll get more into the 3D floor planner selection. So if you have any questions specific to that, I would say save them for tomorrow, where we'll do a really deep dive demonstration. So with that, Chris, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead. I am going to get my screen shared. So give me just 1 second to get that pulled up, and then we will be all set to go. So let me just make sure we're pulling this in correctly. Perfect. All right, so right now what I've done is I've just gone into Houzz Pro, and we're at pretty much a overview screen. So to begin, what we're going to look at is actually the Houzz Pro Clipper. So the Houzz Pro Clipper is a sourcing tool that is extremely beneficial for designers to use to just make their lives a lot easier when it comes to putting together products for a client, storing those into a central, basically, product library. And the first thing we're going to do is just look at how do you go about getting the Houzz Pro Clipper onto your browser. So it is a Google Chrome extension, meaning that you do need to be using Google Chrome to use it. I do personally recommend Chrome as the browser that you use when you're using Houzz Pro. Just from my own experience, it tends to work the best there. And the easiest way to find it is just typing in Houzz Pro Clipper, and you're going to find it right here at the top of the Chrome store. So you just click there and make sure that you add it to your Chrome extensions. One thing that I do get questions on at times with the Clipper is just how do you get back to it? And if you do add it and you're just not terribly familiar with how to add on, or sorry, let me make sure that's showing. Is my screen share still showing my Houzz Pro? 1 second.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, it is showing your Houzz Pro.
Okay, sorry, it should be, let me just make sure I'm viewing this correctly.
Lisa had a great question. What is a clipper?
The Clipper is it's a tool. It's actually, I guess, technically considered a, I have to make sure that it does that correctly every time. So basically, this is the Clipper. You just Google search for the Houzz Pro Clipper, and we'll use it as an example. But it's a extension that will allow you to save images, product titles, cost, vendors, product details, and things like that from pretty much any vendor that you're going to online. So to demo that, first you want to add it. You need to go to Chrome, get the Houzz Pro Clipper, make sure that you're adding it to your extension. In this case, it's already been added to mine, which is why I'm seeing that remove from Chrome item. But basically, once it's there, it's going to show up like this on the upper corner of your browser. So if we were then to navigate and go to a different source, say if we want to go to Houzz or even just a different website, If we were to go to like houzz.com, for example, and we want to go about purchasing looking at different products, we can then navigate in and say, hey, we're looking for example, a sofa for our client. We find the sofa that we want to use. And at that point, all I have to do is go to my clicker. I click open up there, and it's going to pull in like this.
Chris, we don't see the little icon in your navigation
It's
bar.
still not. Oh, okay.
We see the couch view, but just not the clipper icon.
Interesting. Let me try to reshare that then. Sorry about that. Okay. Do you see the clipper icon? Did it open up correctly there?
Yes, we see the right panel. For some reason, that icon is still not showing, but it is just an icon that will be up in your toolbar.
Yeah. For some reason, not sure. The little thing I was going to mention is that whenever you're on the clipper itself, when it comes to saving items, basically what we're going to do first, there is an option for smart sourcing that is going to autofill things, and it does potentially run the risk of like saving true product titles, things like that you may want to not provide to your client. So the way that you go through and grab these products, first off, you click on the photo, and you'll see this Houzz icon. This is the same icon that the Clipper extension has, so it's just a black Houzz logo. You click on those, and that's what saves the images to your Clipper over here. If you're looking to get a title, for example, you can just simply highlight what you want. So maybe I just wanted to say contemporary oversized three-seater sofa. Once I'm done highlighting, navigations open up, and I can select product title. Same thing for cost. You simply highlight what you're looking to save and then select where you want to be saving that. So 646, I'll save that as my cost. Now in this same center, one thing that's really nice is that I also can add in my markups. So if there is going to be a markup on this, say if it's like a 25% markup, I can go ahead and calculate that in right now. And as I do that, I hit set, and it's going to save that my client is now seeing a higher price. The client is going to see at 807.50, but we're going to store this unit, or we're going to save this product at 646, so that as you begin to use it, if it's in a different proposal or something, we're able to capture what you're paying on it, what your client's spending and what they're seeing, and then you're also able to kind of get an idea of what your profits are. And as you do many products on many projects, it helps really give you a clearer view of those types of things. From there, you can save whatever you find to be relevant. So if you want to grab descriptions, you can do that. Again, you want to be picking and choosing exactly kind of the right type of material or information to provide your client. But once you get those few things saved, the rest of this is relatively quick. There are additional details, which we'll look at in a second. But otherwise, the main thing is that you're just wanting to save this into a category. And for people that are using this, especially kind of early on, you're not interacting with a Clipper a ton. This is kind of your first time putting together your product library. I do recommend you can just type in uh, couch or sofas, whatever you would want to, I already have sofa saved, but a lot of times you can just search, sectionals if this was the case. And you just type that in. And if it's something that you don't already have pre-saved as a category, then you can just create it. So the reason I find that to be so beneficial is that as you build up a larger library, a lot of times our defaults are things just like furniture. Um, and there can be a whole lot of stuff that gets saved into furniture. So the more specific you are, the more it can help you later on when it comes to filtering and going through your library. As you know, the larger products, the more products you save, the larger that library is going to get. Beyond that, same thing, vendors, you save them to the vendor. It helps make it so that as you go back and look into uh, your vendor list or things like that, you can pull products easily. And the one thing as well is that if you don't have a vendor in there, again, you just type their name in and hit create new vendor. You can do that from the Clipper tool. You don't have to go back into Houzz and create a vendor to save these products. You just do it right here, and the two systems do speak to each other. If you're doing and then at that point, if we have the project created, which I know we were talking about creating projects yesterday, the nice thing is the Clipper can then also save this to the project. So in this case, I'm going to call it Design Academy. And I don't have a room created, but if I wanted to create a room, I could maybe, let's say, a living room that we're doing. I just type that in, hit create. And for the most part, that is all I really need to do in order to save this product. If you were wanting to save more details, those are down here. Again, you can save the product without adding these types of things in, but if you choose to add dimensions and finish and materials and those types of things, that is information that you can get across to your client as well when you're presenting products. But really all I got to do is hit save, and it will tell me, yippee, it's been saved. And now I can continue clipping. So that is kind of a quick, I would say, quick dive through the Clipper tool. And the biggest thing that I would encourage is that as you're using this, there are quite a few different help guides that we have out there. So if you just Google search Houzz Pro support, you'll pull up our support. We're basically the first thing that shows up there. And if you just type in Clipper, there's a lot of different help articles that exist regarding the Clipper. So it's a great item, again, for getting products in. And that's how you can start being able to build out proposals and invoices whenever they have a lot of product involved with them. So that's kind of running through there. And what we're going to switch gears to is going to be moving over to the proposals and invoices. Um, Really quick, Katie, anything on the Clippers you'd like me to pause on or review?
Yes, we do have a few questions. There was a question if you can clip items from other websites besides Houzz.
Absolutely. You can clip webs. I've actually really never been exposed to a site that you can't clip on from using our Clipper. So you would be able to use it on anything from the Ballard Home Designs of the world and uh, Williams Sonoma Home to France and Sons. I've seen a lot of different international vendors sites that are getting products clipped from. So it's a very universal tool. I just chose Houzz, but there's plenty of different sites you can use for it.
Awesome. There was a question from Molly about whether you can add the MSRP. And then if you add it, will that show anywhere on reports as well?
Yes. So if you save the MSRP, you just save it to that area. So I'm just going to highlight because it forces all these to show up. It's right here. So it's one of the different options that you can add it into the data for. And whenever it comes to MSRP, there's ways that you can get it to pull up in like selection trackers. There's a few different areas that those do exist, or that you can make that data available.
Awesome. Then there was a question about the quality of the images when you're clipping them. Maybe if you can show clipping in a few images. I know sometimes if there is a low quality image, it will give you like a notification.
Sure. Yeah. So the biggest thing is that you just don't like, technically you can clip images over here. Um, and I'll go into like a different product really quick for this, but the biggest advice I have is that basically when you're saving an image on Houzz or using the Clipper, I mean, you want to make sure that you're taking this full size version of the photo, um, because a lot of times these vendors will upload or use a different thumbnail. And if you save it off of some of these different areas here, I've seen other sites, like I know that on the Pottery Barn, for example, like the thumbnail small photos, I mean, you can save them and then they're very, very blurry because they get stretched out and they're just not quite the right size. So I always recommend just click there, make sure it gets brought into the full screen. And then whenever you clip it, those are going to be looking a lot cleaner.
Okay, great. There were a few questions about deleting items from a project, but I think you can probably show that when you get into the tracker there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, no, there were also a few questions around like my Clipper is following me. I can't get it to go away. So I can post an article from the Help Center in the chat as well.
Sure. Yeah. Something that kind of helps with that is if you just right click on the Clipper and hit the disable Clipper when menu is closed. That's the biggest thing I know that can help with that. But yeah, if you run into that, there are some different articles that help with that. Cool. All right. So what we'll do now, give me a second. I just got to make sure that as I get brought back into my project that we're all good. So let me Sorry, I didn't realize that whenever I'm sharing my tab that it won't rotate with my other tabs. So let's make sure that's pulled up. Cool. So what we're going to do is go into our project. So let's go ahead and select our Design Academy project. And what we're going to now move into is a proposal here. So what we're wanting to do is basically first click proposals. And at that point, what you can then do is essentially go up to here and hit new proposal. Once you do that, you're going to see there's actually a few different options. And if you've saved templates in the past, that is one way that you can kind of start off and get quickly into a proposal. But for today, what we're going to do is go in from scratch. So when we go in and click from scratch, at that point, what we're going to do is be taken to this main area with our proposal. So first off, the way I kind of always explain going through this is just going through some of the different navigations and buttons at the top. So we'll go through some of these as well as just moving down through the document. So to begin with, if you had multiple proposals, one thing that's very handy is that you do have the ability just by clicking where it says Design Academy right here. That's the name of this one. Basically, you're able to navigate between your proposals. If I had 3 proposals open, I need to hop down to one that's for maybe a dining room. I could click there and move down. Um, Otherwise, I can also jump to my all proposals right here, or just back to my main project navigation right there. But these are there just to kind of help get through the project, move around a little easier. But as we move right, this next button up here is actions. Actions I find to be a pretty important one because it's going to provide a drop-down menu of quite a few different functionalities of a proposal. So first off, just in general, proposals can be approved and declined. They can be approved on the side of a client, in which case they can e-sign to approve, and that's at the bottom here. Or they can be approved by you. Either way, the ability is left under here in the action area, and there's the approval for line item. There's instances where you may want to duplicate and edit, and you can do that right here. And you can also duplicate and edit this to the same project as well as to a different project. The ability to make your templates is right here as well. So if there's ever a case where you want to save in specific terms and conditions and memos and things like that that are going to be on a type of templated proposal that you're using, you can always build those out, manage them. If you do it right here, you create a proposal just to save it as a template. You can always come back and delete that later, but that's one way of doing that, of course. And then beyond that, you can download your proposals as PDFs, and you can also download these as tear sheets, which look very clean and professional. So under actions, that's just a handful of different things that you can do there. Um, but I do get questions pretty often about like duplicating as well as just deleting, and those things are held up here. Next up is automations. Automations are extremely handy. These are things that will make it so that hey, I sent a proposal, I forgot to follow up with them about a payment that they haven't made yet, or things like that that can slip through the cracks. This just kind of helps make sure that you don't have those happen as often. So when you come in here, you'll see that there's next steps, reminders, and appreciation messages. Next steps, one of them is that basically when a proposal is approved, it's going to just make it into an invoice. There's also the ability to create a task when a proposal goes overdue. So if it goes overdue for payment, you can get notified via task that that is the case. Reminders as well. These are automated reminders that you can turn on so that if your client, for example, has not made a payment, or just a reminder to review the proposal, if it hasn't been checked in a certain amount of time, you can do those sorts of things as well. So basically, send your client an email when it goes overdue on payment. Send your client an email when a proposal is overdue. Those are types of things that you can set, and the due dates all correspond with the section right here where you can assign due dates. Last thing in automations is just your appreciation messages. So if you want to make sure that once they approve it, you send them a quick automated, we appreciate you taking the time to approve this. Those are things that you can add in as well. And the last thing with automations, of course, is that this edit button is the way that you can make it your own. So if there's, email reminders that you want to use, if there's next step verbiage, things like that, you can put that in your own way. You can set how long after an proposal goes unpaid, that you want to follow up with this email. These are all things that can be controlled right here, as well as appreciation messages. So I've always encouraged use the automations. It does help make things easier for you. And don't be afraid that, like, hey, I don't want to use Houzz's verbiage, or I don't want to use it because of I want to make sure that it's coming from me. You can always update this and make sure it sounds like it's coming from your business. Really quick, I mean, there's not too much else at the top here that's too complex. Really, it's just a matter of, like, if you want to download this as a PDF, this is a quick jump point to do it versus right there. We have a share as a link, or copy as a link, which can be shared to your client. So if you wanted to copy this proposal as a link and share it to them, they could do that as well. Preview is a way that you can preview it once you are ready to get it sent to your client. And we'll take a look at that once we've done some other like actions within this proposal. And then the last thing here is sending it. And of course, that is getting it from you to the client. And we'll look at that again at the end. So that's just kind of looking at this top section up top there. And now what
Um,
we're going to do is move through the document a little bit.
Chris, we do have a few questions.
Mhm.
Can you show again how you can approve by line item?
Yeah. So if you're wanting to do approvals by line item, you click actions and then select right there, approve per line item.
Okay, great. And then a
And
follow-up question from Alana on the automations. Are those per proposal?
yeah, you do turn those on. Well, if you save them as, like, if you save this proposal as a template with automations enabled, then they will stick on it with whatever future template or proposals you open from that template. But otherwise, yeah, normally you do have to come back in and turn some of these things on if you want them on.
Awesome. And I know we're working on actually making it easier to send those reminders and giving you the ability to send a reminder per payment line item. For instance, if you have a few scheduled payments, you'll also be able to send different reminders for those specific payments.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, okay. And then can you just show once more how you can save it as a template?
Yeah, yeah, it's underneath actions. So right below duplicate and edit is save as a template. And once you click that, you're basically then going to save your, like, the title that you want on your template, and then make sure that your items field, payment fields, those things are also enabled so that those carry over on future templates. So cool. Are we ready to get into a little more of the proposal?
Sure.
Cool. So next thing up, I just wanted to quickly touch on the general info section. General info can be edited by this little pencil icon. And what you can control here are things like, number one, document owner. This is probably the most important. Well, it's maybe not that, but it's definitely one of the most important parts of the general details of a document. And that's because if you have, like, a assistant designer or somebody that is really in charge of this document, they're the ones building it, and it's a client they're working with, this will make it so that they get all the notifications when the client has, maybe they've opened the proposal and approved it. That way, Benihana here will get a notification that that has been completed. If you don't assign document owners, it does make it more difficult for your team. So it's a really handy thing to make sure that your team members are really able to control their documents. If they create it, they're automatically a document owner. But if it's something where you're working on it as, like, the super admin for your profile, assigning owners is done right here. Or if you have to change things later on, you can always come back and update those right here as well. So that's kind of looking at our document info area. There's a couple other things, due dates and date created. Those show up down here as well. So we'll look at those here in a second. Beyond that, there's the client's information. So if you need to update or change things there, you can always double check that. But client information can be found up here. And then also the company info, which would be your info. Those are things that also are able to be controlled from this section. So up there is the general information area. Below that is your project's title. Just to make sure that you do get a chance to see it, that is something that you can technically edit. So if you wanted to edit right here, you can do that. Um, Going across, we also have our date. The way that this is set up is that this was created today. and it's hidden. So when you create a document, there is always going to be a date that you create it that's showing up, but it is an internal thing. So, uh, if your client was expecting a proposal by Friday and you start it tomorrow, like unless you go ahead and click show date, they're not going to see that you started it on the 25th for their 26th deadline. It basically allows you to hide that. And a lot of times I do see people change this to just show date sent. And then last thing here is our due date. So if there's a date that we need these approvals to be made by, or a date that we need a deposit to come in order to begin the project, you can assign a due date as well. And those are what those automations a lot of times are triggered by, is the due date that you associate with your project. Last thing up here is just the proposal sec right there where it says proposal. Technically, if I wanted to change this to say proposal, living room furnishings, for example, I can go about doing that, hit OK, and this is now going to be the title of this proposal. So, or actually, I have to go there too. Proposal. And this way, if I have a long list of, say, 8 different proposals or 15 different proposals for this one project, it makes it a lot easier to know which one's which. So that's really what those are for. If you don't change it, it just kind of sticks to whatever you see there as a default. And then the last thing up here that you technically can also control is your actual document number. These are procedurally generated, so it's just going to be the next number down the line. If for some reason you need to change it, you can, but otherwise those kind of take care of itself. And that's kind of looking at this general info area. And the next thing we'll look at then is going to be our line items and just building out a proposal with products. So whenever we're doing that, what we're going to come to first is just looking at what we got going on in our items section. So if we were to have, let me just, this will just say, let's say that we have, for example, the ability to create groups. Creating groups is actually something that is somewhat newer. And one thing I've found very handy is actually even our guide on that. So what I'll do really quick is just introduce the idea of how we do that. So just so you can see, this would be an article. This is an example of one of our help articles, actually. And what this is showing is how to group line items on a proposal. So if you are in a situation where you're working with a client and you need to build them out a custom item, that's usually done with the create group, where you can assign like a product. So it's a custom dining chair, and then you can start to build out sub products underneath it. And this guide actually, we're not going to pause on it too long because there's just other material to get through with the items. But this guide does a really good job of explaining how you can make it so you can add all the pieces and markups and the information in that you need. This is how your client sees it. And it's all essentially handled as we go back into our line item right here by hitting create group, titling that group, and then adding in below it the additional items that we need to add. So this is something that, again, if you have questions or you need to do this again in the future, I would recommend getting a hold of your account manager if you do have any problems with doing it. But creating groups is one of the newer features there. The other stuff that's up here is also pretty handy, just some organization items for viewing. So if you've built out a proposal and you have, say, for example, different rooms or categories that you want to group these items into, this is a very quick way to drop them in those different category fits. Next up is customize. Customizing your documents is also something that is really at a business level in terms of what you find to be important that you want to make sure is getting brought in. This is an example of just some of the different things that you can customize, from SKU to status, quantity, units, costs, labor, markups, and so on. And what's kind of cool about all of this is that also you can add your own columns. So if you feel like, hey, I need to, like, they don't have something that is going to be relevant to me, you just click add new column, give it a title, select the type of column you need, and you're able to do that as well. So it's a very, it's a very, in my opinion, free flowing document in terms of what you want to bring into it. There's a lot of times I find these look very different from one meeting I have to another, because just different businesses need or prioritize different columns or data to show up. But that's just managed right here. And you essentially hit customize. You can change the order. Hey, I want to move quantity to my first item. And then again, you can turn off or turn on whatever columns you find to be relevant. So that's kind of just running through some of those items. And then the fun part is actually adding the products. So to go back to what we were starting with earlier on, one of the things that we were doing was just saving a product. So what we did was we saved a product from Houzz, and we saved a sofa. And what we now have is in our library, if I click from library, which is how many designers add their products, you'll see that I have that sofa saved as part of this project in a draft stage. So if I want to put that onto my proposal, all I have to do is click on it, and it's going to get brought in right here. All the information that I stored from it is going to show up here, my photos, all those things. And if I wanted to change it, I can always, switch cover photos. If I need to update my description, because I'm afraid they're going to copy and paste this and try to find it on Google, I could do that. If I needed to update a cost, because obviously this was on a pretty steep sale, maybe that changed, you can update those types of things as well. And again, like this is just basically showing the items that I had on there, and that can change. So if you have other things that you want to place on, feel free to do that. As we build this out, I'm going to go ahead and just grab some other products that have been in my library in the past. So if I click on right here, these pendant lights, that's going to take you to your overall library. And whenever you're in your library, there are a lot of products. Everything that you've ever saved is pretty much going to show up in here. So these are the filters that allow you to kind of go through it quickly. And again, back to kind of what I was saying with the clipper, the more detailed you are on saving products in their category, sometimes the more easy it is to come back and find them. Again, you can always do it by vendor, but a lot of times I just see that basically if you're saving things as sectionals or sofas or love seats or whatever the case is, it just makes it a lot easier if you ever are going to be using a product that you've used in the past. Finding it's going to be a lot easier as those libraries get built out. Searching also, if you just know the product's title or something, you could search for that, and that helps too. But
Chris, we had a few questions from earlier on the library. Maybe now is a good time to add.
Sure.
Can you add categories without clipping?
Yeah, I believe I must admit, that's not something I do a ton of, but I believe can you still see where I'm at on my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, um, sorry, I was just making sure. So basically what you want to do if you're adding categories and you're not wanting to do it from the clipper, I guess the more accurate desktop version is that you want to go to company, which is where your products and services are saved. You click on products and services. It's going to take you to products by default because that's the first thing it has turned on. And if you need to go to services, you click there too. But basically, you'd want to hit, let me see, yeah, manage categories. And then right here, you can add a new category. And then you just assign if it's like the type of category, is it a product or a service? And then you could, of course, save them and or archive them or things like that here.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. Hopefully that helps. And then on a similar note, can you move products from one category, like move it from furniture into sofa, for instance?
Yeah. So at that point, what you would have to do is find that product. So you go to your product library, you select your product itself, edit, and then category is right there. So right underneath the product's title is the category. And then you can, of course, change it or whatever you got to do right there.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm. Cool. So really quick, where we were was within that proposal. And we were basically putting together our I'm gonna just I just added like this lounge chair thing. Maybe we'll say we're doing like two of those or something. um, and then I'm gonna just put some random stuff in. I know it's a room full of designers, so don't judge too hard because there's a good chance not much of this will make much sense together. But I'm trying to make sure it looks at least reasonable. Let's see. All right. And I know from when I clipped this before, I am way off on that price by a full $1,000. Okay. So at that point, this is a way of building out more products. And again, this is mostly just focused on a product proposal. There's so many times that you are going to need to add in different services. If you're, a lot of times you may even see design invoices that are separate to the product proposals that are basically collecting design fees, or if you need to add in a line item for a percentage of fees or stuff like that, you can of course do that. But for today's kind of going through these tools, this is just a product proposal. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that people also got a chance to see is that up here at the top, there's two different. I have them. I have this little icon, that little eye. If you ever see the eye with a slash through it, that means it's only visible to me. So those are going to primarily matter for two different things. One is for your markups and the other is for your shipping markups. So if you're ever in a situation where you want to just create a set markup percentage that is across every single product, the easiest way to do that is just come to your markup area. You'll see that there's a little ellipses next to it, and you click there. Once you've clicked that, you'll see there's several different options. Technically, you can rename it. There's other stuff there. If you wanted to actually show it to your client, you could. But the real one that I wanted to look at was just basically set default value. When you click that, I have my markup set at 15%. If that's wrong and they need to be 20%, if I save that, every single product I added now just went to a 20% markup. And the same functionality exists when it comes to the basically over here with the shipping markup. So as I scroll over a little bit, if I wanted to do a shipping markup, same idea. I hit set default and I add that on. But basically items, any items, you can add those on. And if there is situations where certain items need to be higher than that, you of course can click into that item. Maybe this lounge oak chair, we have a different deal with our vendor, and these we're able to get about more of a 25% markup. You can come in and put that in. It will override the 20% that's on everything else, and it will go to the 25% on that product. So markups, I just want to make sure that you come away from this feeling very confident that you pretty much have to do things on your end to make a markup visible to your client. Our system is built so that that's not going to be the case. And we'll look in a second as well as when you preview the document, how that appears. But those are one thing that, for the most part, we do a really good job of making sure is an internal piece. And if you need to, you can also see there's different items here. The only other one I wanted to take a second to pause on is our tax. So the way that this column works is that you can assign tax to both the item or the item and shipping, and you do it right here. But that doesn't mean that right here the tax is calculated in yet. So this number is basically our cost and our markup, and that is it. Once we get down and we're like, okay, we have most of our items in place, that's where we start to see where the tax can get applied. So if we have a subtotal on this proposal for a handful of products for $8,100, of that $8,100, we know that $1,658 is our markup. And down here, if there is, tax is going to be charged to the client, I can go in and put in my Orange County sales tax. Now that $859 is going to be accumulated basically from every one of these products that has the tax turned on. So the biggest thing is you just want to make sure that you are applying the correct tax to the items that need it, and that you have the correct tax percentage itemized right there. And then the only other thing I was going to mention is that this markup line, again, this is internal. It's not like we send it out to your client with that showing up. But if you ever do need to, you can also add in discounts. So if, sometimes, it's just easier to show a client that, hey, there's a minus $250 discount because I'm waiving my initial design fee or something. Sometimes it's easier just to put in and, 250 as your discount amount right there. And that way they just see it as part of their overall saving or overall line items. So that's really looking at that area. But what we're going to look at next is payments. Any other questions before we hop into the little payment area?
Yes, we do have some questions.
Okay.
Let's see, from Jen, she had a question. How do you handle the situation where a designer may be paying the sales tax upfront?
So that would be more so like whenever it comes to saving the products, you do get to save if a product is taxable, and that's kind of more so for you. Um, and you're talking about like sales tax exemption statuses, I believe. So this is more so related to your client paying the tax. Um, I don't know if Katie has a better answer on that than me, but from what I understand, like, I mean, there's pretty much never a situation where you wouldn't want to have the tax enabled within like the proposal or invoice.
Okay, and if there's further questions on that, we can always follow up with you after.
Sure.
There was a question, can you put a discount on invoices as well?
Yes. Yeah. So one very nice thing is that we're spending obviously a lot more time on proposals. Once we go to the invoices are very much a mirror of our proposal system. That's how I've always kind of thought of it. So these exact same areas exist. The invoice will look identical pretty much to what we're doing right here. The only thing that changes is the title of it, and you can't do e-signatures on a proposal or on an invoice, but
Awesome. Okay, let's see. There were a few other questions. There were some questions around how do you bill for a service?
yeah, great question. So for services, I just go again into my library, and at that point, what I'm going to do is like our library will take you in initially into the products. You just click services and then add on. If it's something where it's like you just need to start off with like hey, it's a design fee, and it's just flat rate and there's no tax on it. That's how you add that one on. If you're like, hey, I want to put my logo on it, you can click on that little photo thing and use a logo or an icon or other things like that as well. But you can add on services, hey, I got a, subcontractors for putting in flooring or whatever the case is. We got a painter coming out and repainting the living room. You can add those things on just by clicking over from products to services. And many times you'll probably want to add a service by creating it. Um, and then that way, in case you have to reuse it again in the future or something, it's going to be there.
Okay, great. Is it possible to have multiple addresses for a client?
Yes. So if you do, then I don't know, like in the document level, there's probably ways to do it. I typically will go into the client itself and hit edit client information. And then down here, let's see where they show it. Because it's basically, you can add the shipping. Maybe it is right here. Address. So I'm not seeing it, but that's just adding our own field. So it's very similar to how on when you're doing your POs, you'll see that you have the drop-down ability to change which your address is shipping to or what it would record as a shipping address. Right now, what it's doing is treating this as just a billing address for your client. So when we get to the POs, after we we'll first convert our proposal to an invoice. And then when we actually send this proposal or invoice into a POs, we'll take a look there because that's where you can also drop down and select different addresses.
Okay, great. Do you mind going back into the library and just explaining what those icons mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, yeah, like just this library.
I
Oh,
think those
sorry,
are
in the
in the
proposal section.
proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Okay. Um, so the first one is project items, is if that's what you're wondering. This
Mhm.
area is basically anything you use a clipper for. So a lot of times you might see 45 products or 30 products getting added into a project item list prior to the proposals even being generated. And sometimes that's because they're, just sourcing items into mood boards and working on some of that before they actually get into a proposal. But project items are going to be the first one up here. And then they basically have them in draft or in process. And in process means they're on they're already moving along into the project. And then down here is the library. And the library is, so those were the pendant icon logo things. And basically there you have your products, your services, and then the filters as to how you can navigate those. And then there's also some basically it's going to sort by your newest product. So if you need to switch that to be like alphabetical or something, you could do that too.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Let's keep going. Then we can get to some of the other questions.
Awesome. So what we're going to hit on next is just payments. We'll roll into the files area, terms and conditions and memos. Those are relatively straightforward for the most part. So first off, what we're going to do is just look at our payment area. One thing you'll notice is that a lot of times when you do initially create a payment area or a proposal, it's going to split the proposal payments into two sections, 30% and 70%. In this case, there's no way we would only take 30% because we're procuring product. So I'm going to just show you guys how you can delete a payment option. But basically, as you're down here, what you can do is click over here on this ellipses, and that's going to allow you to change, log a payment and or delete a payment. So if we were just saying, hey, we're going to delete this and that this amount needs to be for the full 100%, we can put that in. And that will show that we're now billing for the full $12,000 on this invoice. If you were saying, hey, I don't like the title deposit, click. That's one thing that's very universal in Houzz is that if you hover your mouse over it and you kind of see a little like a dialog box, if you click it, you can update it. So if we needed to change this, you could, but that's just kind of what this is as well. Payment terms. So payment terms are going to basically be something that you can also update. So, hey, if this is due on receipt, then that's going to be when it's due on the day that it's sent to them. If we need to change this and say, hey, it's due on the 26th, we can update that as well. If there's net 15 billing or things like that, you can also put those in. So whatever the circumstance is, you can make sure that your billing is accurate. And also if you're like, hey, I need to make sure I'm like, maybe this isn't a full 100%. Maybe we're, if you did want to add in your own line item payment, you hit schedule a payment, and then you can update that line item as well. So overall, payments are really pretty easy to use. So if you need to set it up, it's going to let you do it here. I know yesterday, I think online payment setup was part of the conversation. So certainly get that done. And then the way that payments transfer is that ACH is, up to 2 days. Credit card is 2 to 3 days. And you can send out these proposals and get paid pretty much on the spot. So that's just looking at that area. Next thing really quick is just to roll down into the files. So this is also something where if you had your own files, terms, things like that, that you want to attach, you essentially just click there, and this is what you're going to see. You click upload files, and you can drag and drop those in. Terms and conditions, also really a handy area because what you can, first off, you can always just type into these boxes if you want to. If you need to add things, you can certainly do that. And there are some different, bolding, underlined, italics, all those different kind of features there, as well as hyperlinking. The other thing is just to notice in this bottom right corner is the ability to click My Templates. And at that point, if you had a different, terms and conditions, or if you had something else that you wanted to include there, you can do that. So if there's different terms that you use on a invoice that is more related to your I don't know, say your design fees or things like that, that you can update that and make sure it's going on there proper. The other stuff with this is that you can also take a look and see and manage your templates from this area. So after you've created different memos or template terms and conditions, you can make sure that those are going into your invoices, retainers, purchase orders, whatever else you're sending out to your client. Those are all things that can be updated and edited right here. So memos are the exact same in terms of functionality. So if there's a certain memo that you need to make sure that gets on there, you can. And again, whenever you're making a template for the first time, I really recommend that you pay attention to the files, the terms and conditions and memos that you're using, so that when you save your template, every time moving forward, those are things that are already there for you. Um, Last thing here is e-signature. That's just basically something that you can toggle on or off. And if you turn it on, what that does is allows your client to e-sign to approve. They do need to approve prior to making a payment. So if that's on, they would sign to approve and then get prompted to make their payment for their deposit on the products. So that's kind of running through the rest of this. Last thing there is just the activity stream. It just keeps an eye on when you created your document. It tells you if you've sent it, it'll keep like record of when it was sent and it timestamps that. It keeps an eye on when your client has gone through it, approved items, made payments. And once you take this and make it into an invoice, all those things can get recorded from right here. So really, that's mostly kind of going through all the proposals. Only thing, if you're ever wanting to, you can also rearrange the item or the order that these things come in. And if you wanted to do that, you click over on the 6 dots right there, and you can change, if you want payments to be higher up or whatever the case is. I've seen some different things. I've seen terms and conditions up here above items. So whatever makes sense for you, you can always customize this to fit.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how you would process payments or returns?
Yeah, so that generally that's not something you necessarily always have to do on a proposal level. Sometimes those are easier to handle within the invoices. But basically, if you're depending on the situation, if there are returns, most of the time what I see people do is they'll have to take their invoice. It's a little bit of a there's a few steps involved, but you basically take your invoice. Once you've got your invoice paid, you issue it. And if there's something that's, basically like, hey, they've overpaid, we had to return an item, you take that item out of the invoice. When you issue it, it's going to tell you that, hey, this $400 is an overpayment, and it makes that into a credit. And then you're able to apply that credit to a different document if needed.
Okay, awesome. Hopefully that helps.
And but yeah, otherwise, I mean, you can always, if it's in a proposal and things change, I mean, you can always go in and take an item out and replace it, which would change your total balance. But yeah, there's a couple different choices available there. And I think they're actually updating some of the way that we do credits to make it a little easier. So keep an eye out for that. I believe that's something that's coming maybe not in terribly soon, but I know that that's definitely on the horizon. So
Great.
cool. Really quick, what we're going to do is log a payment here. So just to kind of do that, I'm clicking log payment. This is if I'm doing it manually. Obviously, if I send it out, they pay it online, this automatically occurs. But if they gave me a check, for example, I can just click log payment. I can select how they paid me. There are some different options available here. Go ahead and click OK. If I want, my client can get a receipt. Also, I can make sure my date that it's received and things like that are correct as well. And I hit done. And once I do that, it's going to show that I no longer have a balance and that I have a total that's here. And it's going to treat it as an unapplied payment because it's just not an invoice yet. The way our system looks at all basically all your payments is that they're not that they're unapplied until they go into an invoice, or they're considered a liability within the payment reporting center. So we'll make this into an invoice in a second. But I did want to show you while we're here just how quickly the payment tab does calculate and bring in your payments that you receive if you make them manually, or if you get them made online. So all I have to do is hit company, and financial reports is the first option. So it's right above where we just were with the products and services. I click financial reports. I'm going to select my payment report. And then once I come in here, I'm going to see that I have my $12,000 payment that came in today. So that's how those track. And if you get online payments, you can always come back in and look, and those will break down what the processing fees were, what your total payout was. And then it also gives you some really nice data in terms of when you can expect that money to come into your bank account, because it tells you the deposit dates or transfer dates, all that good stuff, as well as the transfer ID. So that is what just a really quick look at the payment report. And if you're wondering, why do I have $77,000 of liability? It's because of things like this proposal we just worked on that I haven't converted to an invoice yet. That $12,000 gets lumped into liability since it's not an invoice. So we're going to hop back into that project, but just wanted to quickly show you that payment that we just did. So let me go back into my project here. And while we're at this screen, I also want to really just run down into our retainer and credit area. So this is another way that payments can get made. Um, a lot of times, to be honest, the retainer may have came out well before that proposal did. Though there's times that I see people send over multiple proposals and then send a retainer just to get paid on kind of a lump sum. So when it comes to retainers, they're probably one of the most straightforward things that we carry at Houzz in our softwares. If you are in a situation where, hey, I just got to send my client a bill for 20 grand, all I do is hit new retainer. And then at that point, what it's going to do is basically open up my section where I can put in what that amount is. This will look very similar to our proposals. Again, a lot of our documents that you send to your clients are going to have a pretty uniform look. But what I do is I just kind of come in and I say, hey, this retainer, again, if I want to title it different, add a description, I can do that. It is meant so that you can customize this if you want to. But otherwise, I can just come back in and put in 20,000. Yeah, make sure that's checked off as okay. I can say that, hey, it's due by the 13th, or that's in May. I can just say that it's due by, say, Monday the 29th. And then this is also something that I can then send to my client. They're not going to maybe be as, this is fairly close to what it's going to look like for your client. And these are what you can turn on and off as your options. But it's a pretty straightforward document. And then they can go about making their payment right there.
Chris, can you just talk a little bit more at a high level, logging payments on proposals versus invoices, when you would use, one versus the other or both?
Yeah. So most of the time, what you see is that a proposal is used to, one, kind of get ideas. Like, maybe we've used some mood boards and floor plans or even selection board to kind of get some of the different products and ideas together. Um, there's times where designers that especially ones that I've worked with, have voiced to me that they kind of prefer sending, essentially their security deposit to an extent, or the deposit on the products in this manner, because one, your client has a better idea of what they're actually like putting their money towards. A retainer, they're just asking $20,000, and it's going to be, they're trusting that you're using it throughout the product or project. This is something where you can say, hey, these are I need the 12,000 before I begin ordering products. And whether, sometimes you don't even fully even know what your shipping is going to be at this point, so you're going to add that in on the invoicing. Other times you will have that shipping available, and you want to make sure that that's in there as well, and part of what you're getting a down payment on, because you don't want to float the shipping cost too. Though I'm always surprised by how many people actually do float the shipping. But really, what I view it as is like proposal. You can get paid on things as it's kind of before you're ordering, before you're doing anything out of pocket. Once you've gone about purchasing products, then we want to create an invoice. Maybe we need to add in white glove delivery. Maybe we need to add in, if there are any other shipping fees or things that have came up in the project, you can get into that with the invoice. And once you hit create invoice, which is what we're going to do now, what that's going to do is carry over everything from our proposal, including our made payment. Um, and this might be ready to be issued almost, but if there's things that change, I can make sure those get added in. And I normally don't recommend like issuing your invoice until it's pretty much at a point where you're like, okay, this is all getting delivered. Nothing else is changing at this point. And then you're all set.
Great. And can you show, probably back on the proposal, how you can customize the view that your client will see?
Absolutely. So sorry, I should have done that before I hit create. But basically, what you want to do is when you hit preview, So this is your version of the document. When you hit preview, what you're then going to see is this option right here, customize what your client can see. And that's where you can determine, hey, I don't need them to see my descriptions, for example, and that will take those out. Or maybe you do want them to see that. Or, hey, I am doing, we don't need to have approvals per line item. So we just want the electronic signature on there. I already paid this one and approved it. So it's a little, not the best example for that, but you can adjust those types of things right here as well. So if you didn't do it in the actions step in the, in the previous screen, you can still do that here. Columns, you can choose what columns you want to show. This goes back to where I said, like, you have to go out of your way to show them a markup. So if you wanted them to see it, you have to turn that on. Otherwise, again, rest easy. It's not going to be something that they can see. And then pricing, depends on how you want to show it to them. Detailed pricing basically just shows you what the cost is plus the quantity versus a total. It just shows you what the total number is.
Awesome.
Yep. And then again, like if they sign it, if you send it to them, so they have to sign it before they can make approvals. Once they e-sign right there, then they get this will like kind of go for, it says email receipt there, but normally it would say like make payment, and it goes from grayed out to being active, and then they can make their payment online to you as well.
Okay, another question on proposals and retainers. Can you collect a deposit on a proposal and then make that into a retainer?
No. And you can't actually like exceed the, like whenever you send it to them, you can't like build a proposal that's for say $10,000, but then you send over a payment request for 20,000. Those like numbers need to basically add up. So if you are going to be like, I would probably do that the opposite way, where I'd send a retainer request first and get that retainer on file. And then once you have that retainer paid, then you can apply that too. And we'll just act like this has gotten paid, and we can show how, like, if I need to add stuff to my invoice, how we can do that using this retainer. Okay, so are we good to move into the invoice?
Yes, I think we are.
Perfect. So this won't take nearly as long as going through the proposal. And a lot of that is because of the fact that, to be honest, like we've already covered a good amount of how to update, general info or how the library works. Again, a lot of these things are very comparable between the two documents, payments, files. Like we've already seen all of these things. This is that activity stream. Obviously, it's kind of been updated because we've paid it and made it into an invoice. But otherwise, the big things on the invoice that I wanted to kind of just quickly touch on is the ability to issue it. So at one point, issuing an invoice was very important for just getting the tax tax numbers to go into your financial reporting for your tax liabilities. We have made it so that that information is automatically coming from invoices. So if you don't issue it, don't worry. Your reporting should still be pretty much accurate. But otherwise, the only other stuff that's updated is, again, you can take these invoices and duplicate them into, whether you have to duplicate it into the same project or a different project. You can save templates on invoices. Again, you can download these as different things there. And then, of course, you have the ability to create a purchase order out of this as well. And if we wanted to, just really quick, I'm going to say we're adding on. Let's see. We'll just say that we got to add in like some shipping, and we'll just call it all one. So. All right. So at this point now, if I say, for example, I had to add on an extra $100, one thing that I wanted to kind of point out is if you do make a change to your line item, that's going to change your subtotal, because your subtotal is taking into effect your cost plus your shipping, and that can adjust your discount. So the discount doesn't stay stuck based on that proposal. It's going to move with whatever else you're adding to it. So if it really needed to just be a $250 discount, we want to do that as opposed to leaving it as a percentage. Otherwise, what you'll also see is that now that I've added more to it, I do automatically get a new payment line that was created to take care of charging out the rest of this balance. So if you do have things that change as you make an invoice from your proposal, which happens very regularly, the payments will automatically pretty much occur or like populate for you so that you can get those billed and from a very exactly the same in terms of what you can customize. This is how it would look for somebody that has a payment due on May 9th. But the invoicing is very again, it's meant to like mirror a lot of the proposal things. So if you're able to get through the proposals and understand those really well, you should have a very easy time navigating invoicing.
Awesome. Question from Molly. She said sometimes she invoices on behalf of a contractor. Is there a way to basically remove her name and add that contractor's name for a specific invoice?
No. Well, so the invoice will always come from your business, but if you need to, I mean, to be honest, the best thing I've seen people do is basically add in like a from library service charge for an invoice. You can even put that other company's like logo on it if you really wanted to. Just go like upload it from an image type situation. And whenever you're billing it out, make sure that you just build it out so that if it's say $7,000 from an electrician or something, that you have that all added in. So whenever you create your service, you put it in, list the company's name and all that kind of stuff. And then also just in case, like you're paying it, like when you make this into a PO, if you want to capture the expense of what you're paying that electrician, you can always make that into a PO and maybe you're paying 6,000 to the electrician and taking 1,000 off the $7,000 balance, or maybe it's just a straight from you to the electrician. The 7,000 comes into you, and you just are basically it's going directly to them. If that's the case, you can still do that, and the value of doing that is that it can capture the expense out of your like financial overview.
Great. There was a comment on that discount line that I know is something we launched relatively recently. Is there a way to hide it? Can you hide it, or if it's blank, will it just not show up?
Yeah, I'm under the impression that if it's blank, it doesn't appear.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
That's what we covered in our last thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I took it out. I made it blank, and it disappears at that point.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then can you just show how you can see the price per item with the markup included?
Yeah. So it's basically it's your total. So it's the number on the right, and it's also going to break it down, including quantities. So if there's multiple quantities, that is going to factor into the cost. So like this chair here, I have 2 of them, so that's why we get to 680. But this number is always going to be the combination of your markups, your shipping, your cost, and then what the client's cost is what this is. So for like this one, for example, I have the, you can see it there. Actually, I think it doesn't include shipping. I think it just includes cost and markup, but it should always be the sum of those 2 things.
Okay, great. In the interest of time, let's keep going. I know there are some questions on PO and Project Tracker, and I think we're going to get to them.
Cool. So let's go to purchase orders now. So what we do is the easiest way to do it, click actions. I'm going to take my invoice and make it into POs. So when I do that, I can see where which vendors are these going to. Again, a lot of this comes from how you go about sourcing these. So what we'll do is take out my design fee, and then we'll allow the rest of these go to their vendors. So if I hit create purchase orders, I just scroll down here. It's automatically going to create all these different POs for me. And we'll just go into one of them to use as an example here, but we'll use the $5,000 one. So if I come into my purchase order for Ballard Home Design, I click on there. Again, I'll see the different formatting. This is where that ship to was. So if there's a different address, this is what I was thinking of for how to add an extra address to your client. So if like, hey, they got a vacation house that's in, I don't know, like they got a vacation place in Naples, Florida, and the client really lives up in the Midwest. You can just go about adding, hey, their billing address, all that needs to be accurate to where their home is, but the shipping address, you hit add new, and you can put that type of information in right there. And then when you just select between them, or if it needs to go to like a custom address, or sometimes you'll see like receiving warehouses that are saved in here. You can keep that type of information in as well. Over here is our vendors info. So again, vendor information, if I have, you can always switch it. So if somehow this was connected to the wrong vendor, you can change it. You don't have to worry about like deleting it and recreating it. Just click there and choose what's right. If you have account information, trade reps, or things like that, you just want to save that information in with your vendor when you're making this, so that if you were to send it to them, it's going to go to the right person. Business info, these all just follow, due dates, build dates, all that type of information. Again, this just repeats from what we had proposal for invoice from proposal. So it's just kind of keeping track of what we got going on there. And you can always change that if you like. And then as we go down, we'll see our 2 different products that are a part of this. And the most important thing is like, hey, maybe I'm in a situation where I just used my, business Amex. I purchased these products, I get points on them, but I don't have a trade relation with this company. So in that case, all I have to do is hit schedule a payment, hit log payment. I'm going to mark it as billed so that I know, yes, it has been billed. And then I can also come down here and I can mark down that, yes, this has been paid. We went ahead and paid for it on the company card, hit done. And that's going to take my balance that was due and move it into an amount that's paid. And it's also now going to start making calculations in my project that this is an expense. That 51 grand is an expense. So I'm not calculating that as towards any sort of like my profits. It, subtracts that. The only other thing I was going to mention that I really find handy in the purchase orders is that you can update your order status here. We'll look at the selection tracker here in a second as well, but those 2 things do talk. So if you update your order statuses and your POs, you can always go back and see those in the selection tracker. And whenever you're looking at all your purchase orders, again, like if it's been updated, you would see under here. So it makes it really easy to come back into like my Design Academy project, look at my POs and see where I'm at with my different tracking if I had those updated correctly. I'm going to update one just because. Okay. So now that one shows that it's been ordered. But yeah, I'll come into different projects and see just a ton of different statuses and all that good stuff. And it really helps just keep you organized and maybe out of Excel spreadsheets.
Awesome. No questions there. Before we move on, I am just going to launch one more poll. We would love to hear which other features you would like more training on. We're doing a lot more webinars now and feature deep dive. So any specific feature where you think it would be helpful to have more training, we would love to hear so then we can develop more content and training specifically on that. So Chris, you can continue. I know we just have about 15 minutes left.
Sure. So really what we'll take a look at last here then is your selection board or the selection tracker. This is formerly known as the product tracker, but it's had a pretty major facelift. And if you haven't been in here since before, it probably looks a lot different. So number one, this is going to pull over everything that has been proposed, has been brought in front of your clients. And there are times that you may want to, sort this by a room, category, order status. There's different ways that you can organize, as well as basically like when it's been created, the sort by dates and all that kind of stuff as well. So what I wanted to kind of start with is that you do have the ability to also navigate up here. There's planning. So if we had items that we wanted, living room, we can add these things in. Material, these would just come over from the tracker or the clipper. I just didn't clip a lot of this information, as you can tell. But planning is kind of there just to make sure that you're keeping track of everything on a planning level. Procurement is the one that I find to be the most important. This is where you can add in all your shipping information. So a lot of times what I'll find is that we did update our Ballard design products to say ordered, so that's why they're showing up like this. But maybe we want to add in when the shipping, actual shipping date's supposed to be, or we want to add in when the receiving date's going to be, or installations, and all those different types of key pieces of data, delivery dates. Um, all of that is managed right basically in this tracker. And what it does is it allows you to have a very organized, basically timeline for when your project's going to be, like when products are arriving. It's really mostly just product that you'd see here. And beyond, I mean, I was going to say it shows your rooms. The biggest thing is just you have to kind of go into your own emails, take whatever you're getting from your vendor, update all those different pieces in here. And once you have that finished, you're going to have a very detailed out product list of all your different items when they're coming in. If you need to, you can look at things like the financials on them. Those are also one of the tabs. And the main thing I see people do with these is export them into FFEs or FF&Es. So if you need to make an FF&E for one of your subs or whoever you're working with, you just hit download, and then you can select here what information you want to get onto that FF&E. So if you need to make sure that you have different specs on there, if we want to make sure that we have like different order tracking information and when it's going to get delivered and all that included, those are all things that can be included in here as well. But these can be exported to FF&Es. Technically, you can export this to Excel. And same idea, you just choose what you want to export with your items. And if you want to play around with it, maybe send a copy to yourself first before you send this out to anyone else. But but a lot of times, like if you have an operations person, they tend to spend a lot of time kind of living in here. Um, and really, it's just a matter of like you can get to your items info, you can delete items, you can move them around. All those things are done within the item cell itself.
Chris, can you just show one more time how you got to this selections tracker?
Absolutely. So we'll just kind of go back into the project as a whole. So it's the second tab on the left. So when we're in our project and we're at our overview, selection trackers is right there. So it's just right underneath selection boards. And if you click selection boards, you can actually navigate to the tracker as well. But it's the second thing underneath planning right there. And again, I speak with a lot of operation people within design firms like daily, and it normally is purchase orders, and this is all we're focused on those calls.
Is there a way to remove declined items from the tracker?
So that would be a filter where you just filter for approved. I didn't probably elaborate on that as much as I should have earlier when I said I'm only using approved items from that proposal. But when I said it pulls in everything, it pulls in everything. So either you can filter it to say, hey, I just want to filter my approved items. You can also filter it to just pull up your declined items and then just go through and highlight them all and delete them, which is also a choice because obviously you don't need them. So either way, this one's been approved, so that's why you couldn't do that. But yeah, you can come in and just sort by all your deleted items and then or declined items, sorry, and then delete those if they're in the way.
Okay.
That little trash can is what it does for that. And you can see that little pop-up. It's on a invoice, so I can't delete it.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have like a lot of products that are on like the cutting room floor from your selection boards, feel free to clear those up. And there's also other filters that you can kind of use if you ever want to.
Yeah, we got a few questions on this earlier. What is the best way basically to remove items from your library or from your lists?
So if a product has never been used before in anything, I believe you can now delete those. Otherwise, the easiest way to go through is honestly, a lot of it is archiving, because if the products have been in like an invoice even if it's been 2 years ago that sofa was in an invoice, we don't really delete that type of data, but you can go through an archive or even bulk archive. So if you select like a ton of different choice, hey, I need to get rid of, I went through and checked off 25 different products or 100 different products I don't need. Of course, you can then go through and once you do that, you'll see this little options button pop up right next to manage categories. It's only there if you have things selected. But yeah, you could, of course, just archive those all at once.
Okay, great. I know
And
we
you
had
can
a,
also assign things to a category in bulk. I think earlier they were asking about assigning to categories.
oh, perfect. Okay.
Mhm.
Why don't you finish up with the demo and then we'll see what other questions we have time for.
Cool. So, I mean, really within the tracker, that mostly covers a good chunk of it. The last thing I was going to land on was really just kind of looking through some of the different like filters that are available here. Only other thing I was going to mention is that, like, again, like customizing your views. Um, it's right here. So right next to export is the ability to customize your views. And basically what you can change here is all of these different things. So you can see that I have quite a few different things that are turned off. Um, this is just the last thing I wanted to make sure I brought to your attention was that you can get these customized. Um, and that, let me just take a look at something really quick. I'll generate that and kind of pull it up here in a second. If you're making an FF&E, this is kind of how that looks as well. So if you're presenting this to your vendor, a lot of times that's going to be who's going to be getting FF&Es. You can do that. Again, order status would update. All those things would be updated based on how you fill this in. If there's shipping dates or things like that, it would all appear on here. But that's kind of like how one of our FF&Es look. And can I do a tear sheet from here? Yeah.
We're not seeing the FF&E pop up.
Oh, it didn't? Okay.
No.
Give me 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is FF&E. So this is you to a sub or someone that you're working with. Still has your business's logo, client info, all that good stuff, and basically it just whatever data you include. So I included my project's description or my item description, which is why it has this long description on it. But when you're making your FF&E, you get to choose what data you want to bring into this, and when you do, like basically only what you pull in is going to show up. So that was doing an FF&E. The other thing I was going to pull in then real quick is just to kind of give you an idea of a tear sheet. The tear sheets, a lot of times, to be honest, are a really, really, really professional and presentable way to give your clients the products. Um, and if you do those, you just, I'm going to display prices. You don't always have to hit download on that. And once I get that pulled up, I just wanted to kind of let you see the difference between the quality of the two. So this is now, well, that's my design fee thing. But this is more so how one of our tear sheets is going to look. So if you were to, I've worked with designers who've told me that they like to generate tear sheets kind of at the end of a project to give their client. They'll print it off on like at a Kinko's or something with nice paper, and it'll just present them like a really nice look at all the products they have, some of the descriptions on them. If there's things that they want to update in terms of like care for the product, they can do that as well. But it's really like a rug care, but it's a really professional, like nice looking doc for your client, or in this case, it would be like a bound binder almost that they're handing off to them. But it has like good looking photos, product descriptions, and all that kind of stuff. So that was my last thing I wanted to pull up for everyone to see.
Okay, great. Let me just see. Question here. Can you customize the tear sheets?
Yes, to an extent. So when it comes to customizing a tear sheet, I'm going to go ahead and click export and download. And then are you able to see that little download tear sheet option that pops up? I think so.
Yes.
Cool. So you can title it technically. So if you wanted to, obviously, like the client's name or something would generally be the project title. Tear sheet title just carries over from the project name, but you can always update that if you want to. Beyond that, really all you can customize is if you want pricing to be on the tear sheet or not. Otherwise, what it's going to pull over is going to be mostly any data that's been saved on that product. So descriptions, dimensions, colors, materials, and things like that.
Great. Question from Danny. Can a PO be split if there are, for instance, 2 items on it that ship and then one's on back order?
Well, you can, yeah. So you can log multiple payments within a PO, and then it will just show you what you still have due. Can you confirm that's what you're meaning by that? Because like I could say, hey, this item's been ordered. I have another product. I'm just going to throw something in just to do it. We have this coffee table coming from these guys too. This one maybe is on, back ordered. And then out of this, I've paid the 11, the 1900. So what I would do is hit schedule payment. I'd pick that up and I'd put the 1999, I think is what that one was. I'm not doing tax on this. I probably should. Well, it depends on the situation. And then that's how that would look. And I would hit, I'd log my payment, mark as billed. This part of it has been paid. And then my PO would still show that I have an open amount due of 558 as well. So is that kind of what you were looking for on that?
I would think so. Danny, let's see. So Danny clarified if it's one vendor, for instance, with 3 items, 2 were already shipped and 1 is on back order.
Okay. It would be the same process. You would just have you would add 1 more item on. That one would be ordered. You'd make sure that is what you are calculating has been paid to the vendor. I mean, a lot of times, even if it's back ordered, depending on the situation, you may have, it depends. I guess they normally won't hit the card until it gets shipped in some circumstances, but you can split up payments and you can also add in or update the line. Some items on this can be ordered, some can be back ordered, and so on. It does make it though, so you can't have like the document as a whole can only have 1 status, though, technically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of any way to make it so that your like overall document status, like your individual items would all be accurate. And if you look at a selection tracker, all that would be correct. But if you were just to say like, hey, I want to look at my old purchase order, like overview, this part, no status, like that would be a little tricky. But partially paid is what it would show for your PO.
Okay. Great. I know that we just have another minute, so there are a few other questions, but we can always follow up with everyone afterwards. And just one more poll. We would love to hear if you're finding these trainings helpful. Hopefully you're learning new things. And again, please join us tomorrow where we'll get deeper into the selections board, 3D floor planner, and then some of our other tools. So again, thank you so much and have a great day.